Okay, so this is a project called Oil Pastel Still Lives. And it's basically a collage. And this is a system I developed many, many, many years ago for how to avoid students feeling like they're no good because it's very forgiving in that we make the pieces individually and then we combine them at the end in a collage. This is also something that I've done a lot with group projects where each child can make pieces for a larger piece and then we glue them in one big unit. But if somebody, quote, messes up, unquote, you can very easily say, well, just make another one. There's no problem here. So I'm going to be asking you to make about 4 or 5 different objects, and you have a lot of directions you could go in. This lesson is originally for maybe like, oh, fourth grade, could be younger, but fourth grade on up. And for me, I have taught it in the past when I taught elementary school as one of those early exercises in learning observational drawing. Another thing that you can do is add the academic piece of health and healthy living and healthy eating because for many years I was working with studio in a school. They had a program in New York City called Art and Healthy Living, which introduced children in public schools to fruits and vegetables that they might not even know what they are. And the students would draw and paint various objects of things like a turnip or a red sweet potato and apples and so on. And then they would make pictures from them. So in some cases, it would just be a sweet little thumbnail kind of drawing. In other cases, it would be larger paintings or collages. So you could also go in that direction of teaching some kind of health and nutrition unit along with making a still life. Now, what I have here I have a lot of objects, and you don't have to make it observational. You can just sort of make it up. So I've got a lot of objects to choose from. And I have, some containers. Here's my famous coffee mug and kind of a nice, pretty bowl. I gave a dinner party last week for people who've had their COVID shots. And so somebody brought me this. And I can't exactly give you a side view, but a side view of this would make a very, very nice still life. And there's just some real kind of exotic, I don't even know what that flower is. This one right here, that's kind of interesting. I also have some fabrics that I can use in my background, and we'll do the background second. So I'm just going to pick a few things. So there are lots of ways of doing this, but I think what I'm going to do is I'll use the green for my objects. And the point of using colored paper is to teach students how to blend because you want them to blend so that not very much, if any, of what's underneath the colored paper is going to show. So that's kind of the concept, is to allow the students to have that as a sort of a check on themselves as to whether their blending is good or not. I'm going to use my trusty phone book paper just so I don't get this on my cutting mat. If I go kind of close to the edge, I'm not going to color this whole thing because this is not the background. Okay, so I think I'll do an apple as a demo. You might take sort of a neutral color, and let me just get a few colors. I think I'm probably going to make my apple a combination between these two. This is actually a real apple from my basement, and it has seen better days, but it still will be good for apple pie or something. This is a fake apple. I have a lot of fake fruit that I have collected over the years at yard sales for um, teaching about still lives and various projects like that. So here I've got my ammunition here, and I'm going to start. I guess I'll start out with sort of a lighter color. Now, one thing that you want to observe is when a student is going to do an apple, they're going to tend to draw a schematic apple. A schematic apple looks like this. And is that showing well enough? Not really, is it? I'll make it dark. A schematic apple shows it looks like this, and then they stick this stem in there, and then they'll put one or two. That is a schematic apple, and it's not, it's not completely horrible, but it's not the shape of the apple. So you try to teach them a little bit more about nuance and the fact that there is a contour to the apple. So I'm going to do this Red Delicious. I'm going to just go along the edge very slowly. And I'm going to see all the little wobbles and all the little crazy little indentations that are happening. And I call this the belly button. And so the belly button on this one is up here. Now, my point of view is going to be way, way, way different from your point of view, because your point of view, see, my point of view is sort of like that. Also lighting. So I'm going to just start with this sort of orangey red and kind of just start blending. I want to just show you how you can take your crayons and put one color over another. Crayons are like consider them to be like cheap paint, because they're as close to painting as you can get in a dry material, and yet you get a lot of bang for your buck because they are fairly cheap. Now I see a really sort of dark area on this apple, so I'm going to kind of go in here with this sort of purpley to kind of make it. So you want to show them blending. You can use tissue paper or little pieces of paper towels or something like that if you want that kind of an effect. Now I see up here around the middle on my apple here, it's kind of greenish. I'm just going to put a little white on there, maybe a little yellow on there. The stem is the last thing. I always feel like the stem is the reward for the fact that you got through doing the apple. And I'm just going to come over here. So it's really just a building up of texture. And obviously, at different ages, kids are going to be successful or not, but they'll all be very, very good. These will be very wildly fabulous, especially if you allow the students to choose their own, let them choose their own, what they're going to draw, their own objects, and go that direction. Let me see. All right, so I'm going to take a little of this. Now, when you put white, I call it magic white in a way, over red, you're going to get a little pinky. And we do have some highlights here. Now, because I didn't save the highlights, I could kind of scrape a little of that away and then kind of go straight into the paper, because the white should really go okay onto your surface if you don't have other crayon. So it's a fairly clean process. Crayon comes off really easily with soap, so you don't have to kind of worry too much. Yada, yada, yada. And obviously, this is not like the end all and be all of how to do an apple, but I'm going to put a little bit of a highlight up here because I see that there's a little highlight from the light. And then maybe along one side, just a little darker here to sort of show that it's got a little dimension to it. Maybe that's a little too green, so I'm going to kind of just make this a little more neutral. You want kind of that inside belly button thing to be neutral. So there's my apple. I would suggest you do a few different things. And the beauty of this is that the students can then reject. They can make way more than they need for their piece. Remember, you move the paper, not the scissors, for the best, easiest way to cut. And we're going to eventually cut out all of our shapes. So let's say you've got 5 or 6 shapes. The next thing that you're going to do, and you can just set those aside, is create some kind of background. So you can have objects, or if you're doing flowers, you could make a vase, or however you want to approach it. You can be inspired by patterns. I think I'm going to be inspired by these 2 patterns here. So because we're in COVID season here, I'm having you do this smaller than we normally do. So if you do this on a 9x12 sheet of paper, I'm happy. And you may want to, you can invent a background. I'm going to make just like a table line. Doesn't have to be straight. It could be on an angle, whatever. And I might just have, I could have one kind of cloth or 2, but I think I'm just going to have a cloth kind of come down like that, and then maybe have something else. So it's like one cloth is going to be there, and then this could be a wall, it could be a window, it could be whatever you want it to be. I don't want this to take 99 years. I kind of just want to give you the sense of it. All right, so you'll see how easily these oil pastels from Crayola are surprisingly good, because you can really see, you can coat the papers pretty well. You would not know that is really bright green on the other side, because you can really coat them nicely. So getting your color might be a bit of a thing. You can use your finger. I'm going to bring in some, where'd my brown go? Here it is. I'm trying to make this just like a little more tan. Might take more than one layer. Anyway, there you go. But what I also love about Craypos, well, Craypos, that's sort of like saying Scotch tape or Kleenex. Oil pastels is the fact that you can go over things. So if this were coming sort of out, I could make these lines. Let me make like an edge. I'm going to make this a little purpley as opposed to blue, because I think the purple is darker. And my cloth would kind of go probably like that. And then maybe the background, as I say, I'm not going to do the whole thing. Let's say I wanted something bluish, like wallpaper. You could make stripes, you could make a pattern. Pattern is really something very positive in this. You could really let kids go loose or not. It's really however you want to present it. One thing that I will say, right around somewhere between 3rd and 4th grade, students start getting really, really interested in wanting things to look real. And they will start getting very dissatisfied with their work if they don't look real enough. So a little observational nudging can sort of help. Until 3rd grade, practically, your students will do anything you ask them to do, because they haven't yet had that sort of criticism thing kick in, where they're critiquing themselves and they have self-doubts, and it's like, oh, so-and-so's the artist, I'm not the artist, so-and-so's the artist. They appoint a classroom artist. And so as an art teacher, you have to really counteract that and just say, everybody is an artist, and we all have a different timetable, and we all are good at different things in the art world, which is also another reason why you should always make sure you do some sculpture projects, so you will be very, very surprised at how brilliant some of your students will be. Let's stripe this wallpaper. What do you say? Who maybe aren't as good at 2-dimensional work. They'll be really, really good at 3-dimensional work. I'm just making these odd stripes to kind of add more interest. So it's a layering process. It's really easy to do. They're cheap. If they break, they break. Nobody gets upset. It's just kind of the way it is. So I don't know if you can quite imagine this all done with kind of a lovely background, and that I have a whole lot of different things I could choose from. And then the last step of all would be gluing. And of course, you'd have to worry about like how big the shapes are, and it'd be nice to overlap some of the shapes. So let's just say I'm going to put that there because these are going to be like really big things, or maybe it would be somewhere else. The last step of all is the gluing. And as you know, we glue with Elmer's Glue All, which is the very best glue. It doesn't have detergent in it, so that it won't come out of your clothes, but it also won't fall apart. And a glue brush. And I guess I might as well glue this on for you, but even though it's not done, I'll just glue it on and show you. And my famous, again, uses for phone books. I'm just going to be so sad when they stop making phone books. I know it's only a matter of time. I sort of feel like every time I see phone books in my apartment building, my heart starts beating and I start grabbing them. So I have probably like about 200 phone books in my basement. Okay, so on your phone book page, we're pretending that this is all beautifully drawn. We're pretending that I have arranged things and played with it a lot, because you don't just like do what I'm now doing, which is like I'm just showing you how to smack it down. And you just paint around the edges. You don't have to paint around the middle with the glue. You're going to get a beautiful bond. But because it's oil pastel, it will not glue as well. So give it a little more glue than you might normally give a collage. It will stick, but you got to just give it a little more to coax it. And then what I do is I turn it upside down and I'll lay something on it, like a book or something, after I get the whole thing glued, just to really make sure that it's going to stick. Okay, this has a lot of iterations that you could do with this, the technique itself. So it doesn't have to just be, you know, a still life. You could take the technique and do something else with it. The lesson plan that I have here for you has the visual arts standards in it. It's got some essential questions such as how can I explore composition in my work? What are some ways I can practice observational drawing? The habits of mind, materials, tools, sort of the procedure. And what I was showing them, and you'll see this on the website, the printout didn't quite work. I showed them some works, obviously not in black and white, but I'm too cheap to print the color, by Henri Matisse, who worked in very elemental shapes with very simple objects, and then lots of pattern. So he would be a key person for some of his still lifes if you wanted to associate an artist with your lesson. I don't always feel you have to associate an artist to a lesson you're doing, because I don't want children to think that everything just is about aping a dead artist, usually male. You know, there's a lot that we can do that's new here and fresh. So you don't have to always, in my opinion, show an artist, but there are lots of schools of thought where if there's no artist or school of art, then you're missing one of the key connections. I don't happen to agree with that, but hey, that's how it is. Now, that's what I have right now. Does anybody have any questions? Put your mic on and do ask me any questions.
Do we have to do like fruit or flowers, or what?
Say that louder.
Like what sort of objects should we aim for getting? Like
anything around your house. It could be vegetables, fruit, cups, saucers, more than one of those, like a few of those things. It could be stuff, it could be shoes, it could be clothing, it could be toys, especially in your case, Grant. It could be flowers, plants, anything at all that doesn't move. So think still life, think something where you could at least be inspired by something that isn't moving, because my goal here is for you to really learn how to teach this with kids. If you make a really nice artwork in the process, I'm deliriously happy. But my goal is much more how do you go about teaching something observational to like a third grader or a fourth grader and not make it too scary, you know? If you ask them, however, to set up a still life and draw this whole thing perfectly, practically everybody would mess something up. But by the fact that you are gluing them on after the fact, you have a whole lot of openness there for exploration, freedom. Nobody's going to get an ulcer. If they screw up, they screw up. It's okay, because they can make another one. No big deal. They could even turn it around and color the other side if they wanted to.
Would stuffed animals be okay?
Sure. Why not? Anybody else have a question?
I do. So the background doesn't necessarily have to relate to the images, the still life images.
Not really. I mean, you know, it could, or it doesn't have to. I kind of think if you look at Matisse, his backgrounds are very happy, and maybe they sprung from looking at wallpaper or a picture frame or something, but they're not literal. You know, I'm not trying to make a Dutch masterpiece here.
Right.
So much. I'm just trying to give you a method of using the oil pastels in a very easy way for your students to feel comfortable and just begin observing. Plus, remember, you do have a lot of connections here that if you wanted to add something academic, you could. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording then. Yes?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see if I can find the button for where that is.
Will the recording be on YouTube?
We are going to be doing that.